Welcome, everybody, to the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. My name is Nicole Greer, and they call me the Vibrant Coach. And I have got a fantastic guest lined up for you today on the podcast. His name is Greg Martin. Greg is an investment banker. Let me say it again. He's an investment banker, angel investor, entrepreneur, and regular host of a career podcast about the world of work and business. His day job involves advising corporate clients and business owners as they relentlessly, don't we know that? Relentlessly, that's how you got to act, pursue growth at all costs to earn the next $1 million. Working on Bay Street, which some of you may not know is the Wall Street of Canada, Greg is surrounded by high achieving professionals across law, accounting, venture capital, private equity, and the big banks who work 80 plus hours a week to serve their clients. But at what cost to them? Oh, they don't get any time to have fun, do they, Greg? As the host of the Lifetime and Work podcast, Greg is on a mission to explore the world of work, the ups and downs behind taking big risks, and the payoffs that come with it. Through his diverse work background, Greg brings a unique perspective that emphasizes the importance of purpose. Oh, I love that. Fulfillment and personal growth. Yes. What is your why? Are you on a mission, people? As a food guy at heart, what? His first time as co founder running a restaurant, catering, and food e commerce business during the pandemic was a big lesson in understanding the modern working world and today's American dream. We have so much in common, Greg. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Glad to be on.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. And so I started out in the restaurant business, and so I
Oh, really?
totally,
Okay.
totally get it. Yes, I did the Baskin Robbins, and then I did the Applebee's. I did all the things, and so I totally get that whole thing. And I was raised by a guy. My dad, his name was Richard, but they called him Dickie, and he was the food and beverage director for beautiful country clubs for a long time. So
Okay.
even when I was not legal to work, I was working in the restaurant
Yeah.
business.
No. In your blood. So
Yeah, and I'm what?
it's in your blood. Yes, exactly.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it's a love-hate relationship. I mean, I love it when everything's going great, and then you get
100%.
one crazy customer and it's all over. But anyway, I'm so glad that you're on the show. So, Greg, I am collecting definitions of leadership. What's your definition?
Yeah, like I said, I was thinking, I knew you were going to ask this. I think
Yeah.
ton of ways to kind of approach it, but my thought on sort of leadership is that no matter what situation you're in, any room there's a leader, and it can be you and one other person. There can be 20 people. It can be your whole organization, your whole 1,000 person organization, but there's always a leader. And the way I sort of think about, who the leader is the person who sort of understands the mission of that room and of that meeting, of whatever it is, and then puts into action those things that you need to do to achieve that mission. And I just sort of feel like in any situation, that is the leader. That's who you want to be. It doesn't always mean talking the most or standing up there and yeah, speaking the loudest or with the most authority. A lot of times it's just, saying that right thing. And whoever you are trying to be, if you're trying to be that leader in that room, I think there are ways you can sort of take yourself from, hey, I'm just someone listening to this conversation, to sort of understanding, hey, here's what's going on, and then quickly becoming the leader. And so to me, that's what I think of when I think of just that pure word leader.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's a great definition. Yeah, we're going to put all these definitions together. We're going to figure out what we come with. It's our little way of doing some research. So I love what you're talking about. And in your bio, I loved what you said about you have to have purpose, and you've got to, let me see where it was. You were talking about purpose and fulfillment and personal growth. I love those three things so much. What's your purpose? Do you know what your purpose is in life? What are you doing with your life, Greg Martin? Tell us a little bit about purpose, fulfillment, and personal growth.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge when you ask someone that who has it in their bio is they have a very long answer. There's a lot
Oh,
to it.
that's fine.
But no, I honestly, my story and where I sort of started and to where I am today really comes down to thinking about that. I mean, when I finished school and I was doing business, figured I'll take a job I can get it. I was in investment banking, and I didn't really think about purpose or what I was trying to do. I was just trying to be, successful, and quoting that,
Hmm.
whatever that means. And I think it was just, hey, let's make money, let's have people like me, let me get promoted, let me do. And over time, I initially had thought I would be in investment banking for 1 or 2 years. The hours are crazy. It's 80, 100, 120 hour weeks, like as many
Mm.
hours as you can work, you can fit into a week. They do. And but my thought was, I'll do that for a couple years and then go and do something else. And what I found was I sort of hit the 10-year mark of being in investment banking. I was still there and had this thought of like, what am I doing here? What is my purpose? What am I trying to achieve? And that's what
Hmm.
led to that whole sort of restaurant thing of trying to figure that out. And I think, through all that, what I realized is that there was, kind of these elements of things that I liked doing. And I, for me, putting them together was the core. But I mean, it's honestly like a lot simpler when I really go back to it, a lot simpler than what I kind of thought I was trying to achieve. I think I had spent a lot of my career trying to achieve something that people would look at and think I was successful. And I think really it's me, like, it comes down to, do I enjoy my day, my work day? And am I doing something that's challenging and rewarding the next task always more challenging and always more rewarding? And as long as I put myself in that situation, I could be kind of doing anything and feel purposeful and fulfilled. I don't have this thing like, hey, in 20 years I want to achieve this or that. I've realized that doesn't, it's not good for me. It's not sort of what I need. It's really like, hey, today is your life. Today is now. Worry about where you are now today and what you're doing. And so that to me is kind of how I've framed purpose.
I love it. Yeah. And so this is what he said, everybody. I took some quick notes and I always like to give people the cliff notes I'm taking. So, you said if you have purpose, because you have joy. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, like if you're having a good time doing what you're doing, I think that's kind of what the creator wants for us, right? Like to have to enjoy this life, and that you're challenged and there's some kind of rewards, whether it's just feeling good or helping people or making lots of money, whatever the reward might be. And you said it doesn't really matter what I'm doing as long as I get the joy, the challenge, and the reward. So I think that's beautiful. And listeners, I've offered this before, but I believe in this mission statement work so much. And as you know, my mission statement is Nicole Greer is on a mission to energize, impact, and influence people to lead a more vibrant life through engaging what's possible and making it probable. And if you want a document that'll help you do it, it comes from Lori Beth Jones' book, The Path, which changed my life. Email me and I'll get it to you. All right. I love mission, purpose, fulfillment, all those things you're talking about. That's fantastic. Well, you made that big change, right? You went from 10 years investment banking, working like a dog. That's what I heard. Not calling you a dog. You just worked like one, right?
It gets better.
And
It's
then,
not 100 hours every week, but it's a lot.
yeah, it sounds like it. Sounds like it. That's right. But you learned a lot about money, which I think people are missing in this life, right? You got to learn, you got to understand money. It's really important. All right. So, you made this big change. And so, if somebody else is listening to this, like I work like a dog too, and I'm busy all the time, and I don't know if what I'm doing is for me. When is it the time to make a big change? Like maybe starting a business like you or finding a new job?
So I think if you really, like with me, I really wanted to do it.
Yeah.
At some point, I didn't really care when. I knew I had to do it at some point. It was sort of this thing in me. And I hope that right? I think that why within you, whether you do it. It's a lot more though, I think, how you go ahead and do it.
Mm.
What I did was I very slowly spent little extra time that I had, free time thinking about it, writing business plans, talking to people, going and actually starting the business. And I still, like, even we started a food and restaurant business. We focus a lot on catering and office lunches and that sort of thing. And so I just was right close to where my office was for my day job. And so I just sort of, got involved slowly that way. And that worked for me. Like I was terrified of going and leaving my secure job. Being able to have enough money, being able to, kind of earn a living, be able to support the business, not knowing what was going on. So I think, you kind of have to do it in your own way. And I think that's fine. But at the same time, I think, it became something that I just couldn't stop thinking about. Like I couldn't work properly. I couldn't do my old job the same way because it just kind of kept overcoming my thoughts. And I think you just kind of do that. What I was actually looking for was that challenge. My day job didn't provide that challenge that I needed anymore. And
Hmm.
so maybe not even recognizing that, but that's what was happening to me now that I look back. And so, eventually I had to do something. It doesn't mean you have to go start your own business though. There's lots of things you can do to change, but I knew that I needed to change at some point.
Yeah. All right. So the right time to do it is I'm hearing like when you kind of get that obsessive thought
Just
that just
obsessed.
keeps
Yeah.
coming back around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right. And so I just really wanted to do it, he said. So like, here's the thing, people, pay attention to what like maybe your heart and dare I say this, maybe your soul is trying to tell you, like step out, do something really big, live out the vision. That's fantastic. So you went ahead and did it and just noticed that, you got to do things scared. He said he was terrified. And I think that's another thing about being entrepreneurial or, stepping into a whole new career. Sometimes you just got to do it scared. What do you think about that?
Yes. Well, it's scary is good. It's good. I think I had to. My son went to a day camp today, which he was terrified of. I dropped him off, and he's crying and
Oh,
just so
bless
upset
his
about
heart.
it. He's 6, and
Oh.
I told it does. It kind of works. It kind of doesn't work. But I told him, I'm just like, scary things are actually good. You're gonna come home and having loved, saying you loved it. But yes, the unknown is scary, and that's what it was for me. You know something for however many years, and you're just comfortable there, and there's a discomfort that you have to have. And in again, not going back to that feeling, I had this feeling I knew I needed to go and get
Hmm.
uncomfortable, be in a new situation, but it's scary, and I think that's okay. I think you have this thought it's for some reason that if you're sort of not quote unquote successful, that you're going to end up homeless and without anything, and just and I don't that was never really the downside, but in your head you're worried about it. That's what you think. And what saving grace I had maybe potentially was that I realized this even better now, is that you can always go back. I was in a field for 10, 11 years. I'm
Hmm.
very well qualified to go right back into that same field when I got the entrepreneurial thing out of my system, which I did. So I actually I left started this food business. The pandemic was very tough on us. I realized I couldn't do it anymore, and I actually ended up going straight back to that career, but as a different person, having learned all these new things, having done just a different experience, having lived this restaurant thing for you know 2 3 years. We had done it for 5 ultimately, and it was, yeah, when I came back to the world of investment banking, a totally different approach to my mindset, my perspective.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I think that the mindset that people need in the corporate world is the entrepreneurial mindset. Instead of having a job, you come at your job with this entrepreneurial mindset. It can change everything. I love that. That's fantastic. How do you see what's going on in the work that you're doing right now? How are you seeing companies motivate their employees to achieve their best work? You went out, you did this entrepreneurial thing, that's what I do every day of my life. And so it's like if it's to be, it's up to me, and so I've got to show up 100% or as close to it as possible in order to get things done for the day. But you've got some experience where you were out there trying to make it happen entrepreneurially. Stinking COVID messed it up for you. I am so sorry, by the way. That's
Yeah.
terrible. Um, but then coming back to work with this new mindset and everything, what are you seeing that companies could do to help their employees achieve more, do their best work?
So I mean, there's the natural thing of money, and money goes so far, but and people talk about culture as well, which I think a lot of people think of it means, do you have
Mm,
socials? Do you have, ping pong table and all those sorts of things? And those things help. I think they're, people like ping pong and money. But really, when it comes down to it, I think what people are driving towards is having more and more influence, more and more say on the organization, and just being a part of something. Like, so many people want to be a part of something where we don't always have to be the leader, the head of the group, but we do want to believe in something, and we do want to be a part of it. And so, and it doesn't have to be that doesn't mean that only companies that have this crazy altruistic vision need to be it. Honestly, it can be, hey, we're trying to sell, I don't know, to use for the office, we're trying to sell paper, and what's the vision? Like, how are we doing that? How are we employing all these people and making it exciting, and sort of doing all that? And I think the more you can have your entire organization participate in that and feel part of that and important, I think the more and the better culture you create.
I couldn't agree more. And so, that's what I'm all about, building a vibrant
Yeah.
culture. And I agree. Ping pong is fun, but we have to get some work done. And I think having socials is great. However, I am going to say for probably the 27th time on this podcast, stop buying pizza for people. They want something different. Would you stop buying pizza? Get a nice salad brought in. Bring in a nice bowl with some, grains and veggies. I'm just saying, feed your people so they feel good and they can work good. All right, that's the end of that diatribe. Okay, so he says, they people want more influence and they want more say. And Greg, when I talk about culture to people and I give presentations and that kind of thing, I'm like, people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And you said that. Like they want to contribute to the vision, but like,
Yeah.
where are we going and how are we going to get there? And please connect my job to how we get there so I see it. So I think you're right on. And then when they see it, they can believe in it because you said they have to believe something. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, no, I found that like running a restaurant, it's we had I think 17 employees, probably maybe 20 at our peak, and they're above minimum wage, but not that much more above minimum wage people, and they all just come to work. Like if you have a vision and you're trying to achieve something, they come to work with such energy and just a joy. I think I don't know, like they, again, every
Yeah.
day is not amazing, like whatever, it's not going to change that. Sometimes you get a nail in your tire, whatever, bad things happen, but uh, you come into it with this, hey, I know what we're trying to achieve and I was a part of it, and that's what you kind of want. I think no matter who you are.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it goes right back to what you said at the beginning, like some days is full of joy and that's wonderful and it, is motivating. And then some days there's a challenge. And really, I don't know about you, Greg, but like I love a good challenge. I'm like, okay, put our heads together, let's dig deep. How can we solve this thing? Let's get going. And whether the day is full of joy or full of challenges, at the end of the day, if you can go, man, we MacGyvered it, we did it, then that's the reward,
That's what
right?
you yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. Well, you mentioned earlier this definition of like success, and you kind of said, there's success and then there's, fulfillment. But, one of the things I want to ask you is what does success mean when starting a business? If somebody said, I want to have a successful business, what would they do and how can somebody achieve it? Or, even if you're just starting this week, hello, it's Monday. So how do we have success this week? How do we achieve it?
So there are very easy ways to gauge success with a business, and maybe almost unfortunately, because typically with any business, you have a lot of comparisons. If you open up a dry cleaner, there's probably another dry cleaner within the vicinity, and you can kind of compare. Are you busier than them? Are they not? Are they, how are they doing it versus you? And I think that's the trap that, yes, you want to know about it, but don't define success based on that. I think how you have to define the success is around what do you want out of it? And are you getting that out of it? So why did you open this dry cleaner? And is it that you want to golf every morning and have something that works by itself and you can generate a bit of income? Is it because you want to I don't know, make $20 million and what is the thing that you want out of it that is driving you to open this restaurant, this dry cleaner, this new business? And are you getting that? And I think, I was never overly honest with myself. I think that was one of my kind of
Mm,
issues, is I was never totally honest with myself on what I wanted. I think I wanted to just be successful, which to me meant having a business where I could, it could provide an income to me, and lots of people, it was busy all the time. Like that was sort of it. And what was missing with that was, well, what would I want though? Like what was my day like? What was I doing? What was my influence? How, a lot of those things. And really, I think over time realized that I didn't need to have the restaurant to get that. I wanted to be able to influence people. I wanted to be able to be involved in businesses and help make decisions and help those businesses grow and all those things. And I didn't necessarily need a restaurant to do that. So yeah, I don't know. It's everyone's got their own definition of success, but I think, I 100% agree with what you're saying. Like you got to figure that out. You got to tell people about it early, start talking to people about it. Why are you doing this? What do you want out of it? What does success mean to you? Because it's very hard to get anywhere if you don't know where you're trying to go.
oh, that's 100% right. In fact, Um, I've got, and I'll mention it again, friends, listeners. I've got a little kind of recipe for leadership right now. This is how I'm putting it together right now, Greg. I'm going to take all these other definitions that I've gotten and make sure all these geniuses who come on my show, I'm making sure that it's in the content. But the first thing is like leaders just need to lead with clarity. And that's what you're saying, like define success, and then everybody knows this is what we're doing. I have a client and working with the folks that are at the supervisory level and they got this big, like directive from the home office to like, we're going to double what we're making this year. And everybody's like, what? And, and so it's so confusing to people because they're like, how are we going to do that? Now, I think they can. And the people up here think they can, but it's not been communicated how we can.
Right.
And so then it feels like a threat instead of an opportunity,
Right.
So it's really, really about that. And you said this really great little phrase. You said I was never really overly honest with myself. And man, isn't that the truth about being in leadership is you got to sit your butt in a chair and get honest. Like what's happening, right? So
Yeah.
important.
Otherwise, you pay for it later.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, and really, everybody, that's the researched skill of reflection. Every leader needs to be seriously good at sitting down and being overly honest with themselves. So I think that's fantastic. All right, so you've got a question that you wanted me to ask you, and we've not talked about layoffs on the show before, and so you must have some experience. How can you turn a layoff into an opportunity for career growth? Tell me about that question and what's the answer?
Yeah, so well, interestingly, I was laid off. It was and it was a mildly funny story. I was working a lot, and so I eventually reached a breaking point of type of burnout, and I quit. And my company didn't like that. They, I was good at it. They had lost a bunch of people already. They wanted me to stay, and they were actually quite good about it. And gave me a bunch of extra vacation and switched my position slightly and did a bunch of things. And but then 6 to 8 months later, the company itself wasn't doing so well. And so,
Mm.
when they decided, hey, we need to do some layoffs. And when that came, they said, well, didn't Greg say he wanted to leave? Let's lay him off. So I got laid off
Oh
with it.
no, I'm sorry.
And I mean, I guess I don't know, it's a curse and a blessing, I guess, maybe at the same time. But
Hmm.
when there's lots of people getting laid off across technology right now has been, hey, the last few years just been so much hiring and now people are getting laid off. And what's interesting and happening is in a lot of ways, well, first of all, you get some severance. So you have a bit of, you're paid actually to do nothing in some cases or to find a new job. But if that new job is starting your own business or traveling or doing something else, like you can really get a lot out of that. Like that can actually be a great way. Some people I try to tell, like, you have this tendency to panic when you get laid off, and you're worried that because it's insulting. No one you're being broken up with and you have no choice. It's insulting. It's doesn't feel good. But really, it's like, well, I've got a few months off here. Like, when do I ever have a few months off? Like, you can do anything. You can go travel for 3 months. You're not going to get that chance otherwise. You can go, start a new business. You can, whatever. I don't know. Watch all the movies that you never saw. You can do whatever you want. Learn a language. I don't know. It can definitely be an opportunity for you. So I think, you really have to. I don't know. I guess maybe just an optimist at heart, but I think that you just have to work towards turning it around that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do believe in that old saying, one door closes and another opens. I believe that with all my heart,
Yeah.
because I've had things, that I'm a lot older than you, but like I've had things happen and I'm like, what just happened? And then like if you'll just, stay calm, get a plan of action, great things can really, really happen out of that. So I agree with you. And if you get 3 months severance, you should not take all three and travel because you'll be broke. But you should take
Don't
at
go
least
someplace
two
too
weeks,
expensive. Yeah.
3 weeks max, and then come home, get your resume together, get your act together. Yeah, yeah. And that's just Mama Nicole saying that. Okay. All right. So I love that. All right. So what are some tips that you might have for identifying the career or the job that is right for you. You've had kind of some different hats on: investment banking, restaurateur. So tell us about that. What are some tips for identifying the career or job that is right for you?
Yeah, so that's a lot of the reason and the rationale for the podcast that I host, Lifetime at Work. It's really about that. It's, are we happy in our jobs? What are we trying to get out of these jobs? Why do we have them? What's the right one for me? And I think because just, I'm, mid to late 30s, and that's the question that we're all asking ourselves. We've been doing
Yeah,
a job for however long, and we're trying to, like, is this it? Am I just doing this until I'm retiring? And that's, how I've been thinking as well.
right.
But it just is the topic. It's what everyone is sort of saying. But I also, it's a challenge, right? You kind of you graduate from university. Now it's like, let's go out in the world. And it's hard to know with conviction that you're going to do this thing forever. And I think the big thing that people miss, though, and this is just me from talking to lots of people on the podcast, talking to people who are, kind of my age going through this, and young people as well, trying to find direction out there, is a lot of people think of the role and the company they want to work for and what it does. And in a lot of cases, it doesn't really matter what it does. It kind of a lot more matters what you do and the skills that you do within that business. So,
Hmm.
I think the sales opportunity is probably maybe one of the better examples where it doesn't really matter what you're selling. It matters a lot more how your organization goes about selling and what you do in the business. And I found that in investment banking, where in my role as well, where it's not really about the technical, like the hard part is not the technical know-how of how things work or the math or anything like that. A lot more is dealing with people, understanding what people are talking about, client service, working in teams. Like, there's all these things, and really that is what makes a job good or bad, I think, anyways. And so what you need to do is sort of find and put yourself in a situation where you can be flexing those, call it like non-technical skills. Like, it's not about the engineering, it's not about whatever, it's about the communication and the leadership and a lot of those, where you can be flexible. And I think that's really what it is. So I think people just get hung up with, I like sports, so I want to find a career in sports. And it's like, yes, maybe that's ideal, maybe, but it can be really challenging, and you may not be able to find the perfect thing for you within sports. And I don't think it matters. I think what does matter is that you're, being challenged in your job, you're on a track, you're using skills that you have that can better you, and you can advance in your career. And I just think that that's kind of what you're ultimately searching for. And it's hard to know all the jobs out there, right? So you just kind of have to get into it and keep looking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do love what you're saying though about it's really about the communication, the teamwork, the people you're going to work with. And that's what we teach when we talk about build a vibrant culture. You need to be working with a happy group of people doing work that they love. And to your point, if you could have both things at sports and that, hallelujah, I have, won the lottery. Um, but
Yeah.
but definitely working with great people is everything. And they say the statistic, you probably already know this, Greg, is that when people quit a job, they usually don't quit the job, they quit the manager.
Yeah.
And so and so having a great leader is ultimately important as well. And so you got to know a lot about your leader when you're interviewing for a position, that kind of thing. And, inside Build a Vibrant Culture, we have a full services of recruiting. And one of the things that we do when we recruit for a company is we get the download on who the manager is for the person who we're going to recruit, and share some intimate things about them in terms of like where, not just where they went to school or what kind of degree they have, but like what their philosophy is and what they're hoping to do inside that, what the career path is for that job. So when you're identifying the career or job that is right for you, you've got to be working with a recruiter, and you got to be working with a company who's willing to kind of open up the curtain and let you in a little bit during the job interview process. And
Yeah.
I find that is hard for people to find. And so when they work with us, they're totally tickled about that. And it's really about the opportunity. So I'd call what you're talking about soft skills.
They're
Do you
soft
agree
skills.
with that?
Yeah, they are. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's where you get the most fulfillment out of these soft for some reason. And I never would have
Oh,
thought that. Like, I'm
absolutely.
not a soft skills guy by nature by any means. Like
Oh,
I was
really?
always like math and like, because I could understand it. I hated in school a question where it
Didn't
was
like English
write
class.
about this. I always liked where there was a definitive, the answer is 10. But when you kind of get into it, like that's really those are really important and they're harder to learn in some cases. And really the only way to learn these soft skills sometimes is to like get into a job and do it and see people
Yeah.
do
Yeah. Or, you know, call Build a Vibrant Culture and we'll come in, we'll teach
it.
everybody how to
You can
communicate.
work on
Really?
them 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. That's right. Okay. All right. So I've got this last question for you. I just recently, maybe about 3 years ago, finally got my undergrad done, and then I kept going, and then I went and I got my MSOD, my Master of Science in Organization Development, and uh, I got to tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed getting my master's degree, way more than my undergrad, because it was tough to do an undergrad at 42. But I'm curious. Should I get it? Should people get an MBA? Should they get a master's degree? Should they start a business or join a tech company? What should people do with their lives after you've listened to all these people on your podcast? And tell them again about your podcast, and then answer my question.
Yeah. So it's Lifetime at Work podcast.
Yeah.
And as we do, I just interview different guests about their job and the meaning and purpose and what it is and how they got into it and what they like and what they dislike about it. And
Mm,
that's for me anyways, hope my goal is that other people who are listening to that can reflect on their own job when doing that and they understand it better because you're talking about it. I don't know. Sometimes, and I
absolutely.
it's just interesting. Like I have some really good friends of mine who I've interviewed, and one for instance is a doctor, and I never I talked to him for an hour about being a doctor. Really cool. Like I never had that conversation with him
That's
before,
awesome.
and you just sort of learn about someone in that way, and I think learn a lot about yourself and what you're trying to get out of work and all that, right? So I think that's the big benefit. And now I'm forgetting your question was.
Yeah, people that, again, if they're career transitioning or they want to go up at the company they're in, they want to get, they're like, I want to get promoted. What do I need to do to get noticed? So should people, not sure about whether or not they're living their life with joy, challenge, and purpose, like you were talking about earlier, should they get an MBA, start a business, or join a tech company?
Yeah, so I do think more experience is better. So, and
Okay,
I would say an MBA is an experience, like any school is an experience. The
100%.
one challenge, but it could be another job, it could be starting a business. I think you have to think of all of it as experiences. You're going to learn about yourself and about a lot of things doing it. I would say that an MBA and I'm live in the world of finance, Bay Street, Wall Street. It's helpful, but what's most helpful is when you know where you're trying to go generally and you want to change.
Mhm.
The challenge with an MBA is it's a very expensive thing. Like it's just you're not working for 2 years, if generally, and you're paying for it. And so to make that leap and to do that, you probably should at least have a pretty good sense for where you're trying to go because an MBA can actually provide you like a great reset on your career. I know some people who have done it. They were in one industry and they really wanted to shift to another, and there's no way they can get into it unless they did go to the MBA, and that's just the route. And I think that's great. You also get an amazing network usually when you go ahead and do that. So if those things are they come at a high cost, but if those things are what you want to do, then totally you can. Though I didn't never got one. I never got a master's degree. I was just sort of an undergrad, and to me though, the MBA was starting a business. It was
Oh, that was an MBA, believe me. You
and
are
yeah,
right.
it was just right for me, right? It was the right thing for me. I needed to do it. I felt like there was not as much in an MBA that I could have learned versus going and starting a business. And I think I was right, but it's just pros and cons, honestly. And I think you really have to, when you're going and embarking on it, you don't have to know exactly what you want to do next after you take an MBA, but it is certainly helpful to know the zone that you're in and where you're trying to head and knowing that that is going to be the right thing. And most people with a master's do that, right? You're trying to take a master's because you want to really specialize on this thing to get somewhere. And if that works, then totally. But I wouldn't do it to just find yourself. It's just really expensive.
Yeah.
So
And maybe do it like I did it. Wait till you're older
yeah, it's
to
never
do,
exactly. Yeah.
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 Because then you're like, you know what you're interested in, I think that, still, I mean, still in your 30s, it's kind of like I'm still kind of figuring it all out, you know. So definitely. And here's the thing I would tell you about MBAs, which I learned. I teach at University of North Carolina at Charlotte as an adjunct, and it's about 60,000 dollars for an MBA, I think. And I think that's out there, but there are so many flex programs. That's the other thing I would say, is I know so many people who are taking like one class towards their MBA at a time. So just take the one class. You don't have to buy the whole package. You know, you could just take one thing at a time and say, is this fun? Do I enjoy it? Because I love what Greg Martin is telling us today, that you got to find joy, you got to find challenge, and you got to find reward in what you're doing. And I just love that that's your heart, you know, that you got to live this life, what I would call a vibrant life instead
Yeah.
of a vibrant culture. That's awesome. Well, we are at the top of the hour, and I know that everybody's like, wait, don't let Greg Martin go. He's got something else to share. I'm wondering if you've got one more nugget of genius that you'd like to leave with our listeners, especially regarding your podcast, Lifetime at Work. Are there some nuggets that you've picked up from that, or something else you'd like to leave with us as kind of something to remember Greg Martin by?
Yeah, I'd say for someone who wants to listen to, and this is just something that I've noticed from talking to a lot of people. So when I go and have a meeting with someone, and especially if it's on a Friday, I usually get this whole, um, when you ask them how are you doing, it's on a Friday. They say, oh, it's Friday. Like they're happy that the week was over. And I think that
Right, right.
I don't do that typically. I'm actually really conscious of it because it's become a pet peeve over time. I don't. It's not about Mondays being good and Fridays being bad. I just very firmly personally believe that you can get an incredible amount of fulfillment out of your job. Like you can like
Oh,
life's purpose out of it. And like I say to on the podcast a bunch of times with various guests, 100 years ago there was I don't know 10 jobs. Like there was a very few things you could do. It's unbelievable how many different things we can do today, and that's both provides an incredible amount of opportunity, but it's also kind of daunting because it's hard to even conceptualize how many different types of jobs, companies, things you can do out there. But if you are unhappy with any respect of your job, then you really do need to kind of go out there and explore because there is a lot out there. And if you're sort of miserable and looking forward and just saying, hey, I'm going to retire in 20 years or when I reach 65, and that's when my life is going to begin, it's just the wrong way to think about it. I think really what you need to do is figure out and what it is, and because your career is a journey as your life is a journey, and it's super important, and the key is enjoying that journey, what you're doing. And so that's what I try to get out of people ultimately on the podcast as well, and just everyone's got a bit of a different take and a bit of a different story on that, but you can definitely learn a lot from people and the mistakes they've made. So that's kind of the idea.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so I couldn't agree more. It's all about fulfillment, you know. And Greg, I had a master coach tell me one time. He said, life is like a dim sum restaurant. I don't know if any of y'all have ever been to a dim sum restaurant. It's
I
a
have.
Chinese restaurant where they have little carts and these little guys and gals run around the restaurant, and they're like, "Do you want one of these? Do you want one of these? Do you want one of these?" And you can say yes or no. And really, he's like, if people could just see the opportunities that are out there. And so, if you want to listen to people who have explored all sorts of different roles and positions, go over to Greg's podcast. He's a lifetime at work, and you can find him at www.lifetimeatwork.com. And also, Greg is on the LinkedIn, of course. So go to linkedin.com, and then it's Greg Martin 416. Greg, I am so grateful to have you on the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. Anything else you want to share with the listeners before we sign off?
No, that's great. I appreciate the opportunity and love chatting. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was definitely a pleasure. All right, everybody. I know that Greg and I would both personally be so indebted if you would go down right now and click the like button and subscribe to the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. And would you leave a little love note for Greg? I mean, the guy is all about joy, challenge, reward. He's all about, chasing down that feeling that there might be something else you could do with your career, taking the opportunities, being overly honest with yourself, and know where you're going to go. Thank you so much, Greg Martin, for being on the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast.
Thanks.